My man! Welcome to the show. How are you? Really excited as a parent and as a person of color to have our guest today. Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, guys, what's up? It's Irfan. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Irfan Jaffrey with the Roosterly Small Business Podcast. Today, I'm really excited as a parent and as a person of color to have our guest today, Larry Davis, who is founder and CEO of Remedy Team. I am not going to try and explain what he does, but I can certainly appreciate the weight and the impact that his work has on education. So, Larry, without further ado, let me turn it over to you and go ahead and introduce yourself and explain a little bit about how you got started, why you got started, and the progress that you've made.
Well, before I do any of that, let me say thank you for having me. This is a pleasure and it's an honor. And I've been waiting for this opportunity to speak with you and be on your podcast. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I am a second career educator. I spent 14 years in corporate America. And when I was about to become a parent, I had to look into what kind of school would my child go to, public or private. Charter schools were on the horizon, but they were not really out. And that's how I became an educator. I went and substituted. And when we have time, I'll tell you that story. That story is what actually changed my life.
Okay.
My first substitute job was at a first grade, Spanish speaking only classroom. Okay. And I didn't speak Spanish. And so I went there and the teacher left great notes. And there was one student who spoke Spanish and English. She checked rows. She told me when it was time to go to reading, when it was time to go to math, when it was time to transition to recess and lunch. And about 12:30, 1 o'clock, another parent came in and read to the students the rest of the day. At the end of the day, each of those students, those first grade students, came up to me, speaking to me in Spanish. And I look over and this parent, it was a mom, and she's crying. She's in tears. And I'm like, what have I done? And I said, what are they saying? She said, they're telling you, oh, they had such a great time. Please come back. You're incredible. We love you, Mr. Davis. You're so tall. Because I'm 6'5", right? Okay. And I left and I went home and I thought, I spent a whole day in front of these incredible young scholars and I added no value to them. And that I couldn't shake that feeling. And that's what made me become an educator. And because of that feeling, I always say that, education needs a champion and our children deserve one. And because of that one moment, it gave me my why. And every student from that point forward who came into my classroom, who came into my building when I was a principal, who I supervised as a regional superintendent, I put my son and my daughter's face on them, not the color of their skin, but their face. They deserve that education. And so Remedy Team is not, we don't consult, we give remedies. We give school districts and organizations remedy. We go in and study what their issue is, and we give them specific targeted remedies for what can help them. Instead of just giving them, hey, here's this catch-all, I wrote a book, here's a catch-all thing that'll help you do this. No, it's all about why is this particular situation happening with your organization, with your campus, with your students, and then how do we get to the root of it? Because if we don't do that, we're not going to be successful.
Okay. Let's pause there for a second. In your corporate life, what was your background? What were you doing?
I was a general manager, recruiter, and troubleshooter.
Okay.
So listen, my regional directors and regional VPs, they made a lot of money off me because they would send me to all the problem locations, and in 3 months I would turn them around and they would move me to another location. Mm-hmm. And the person who would come in after me would get promoted. And I asked, why am I not getting promoted? I'm turning these units around. And they just told me, you're too valuable for me to promote.
Right. Okay.
You become a victim of your own success, right?
Right.
And so that's when I decided to look at, again, I was becoming a dad, so I need to do something that wasn't going to have me moving from San Antonio in 3 months and then Austin in 3 months, Dallas in 3 months forward. I was going to be stationary because I was about to be a parent. So,
okay. So let me put myself in your shoes for a minute. You've got this corporate job. You're successful. You're doing well. Yes. You're about to have kids. I can relate to that. I started my business a few years before I had kids, but it was still something that was on my mind, is family planning and things like that. So how do you go from a relatively comfortable lifestyle to starting from zero? Which is I'm assuming that's sort of what you had to do as you switched gears. How was that process for you?
It's not even, it was less than zero because I took about a 60% pay cut. When I became a teacher, teachers were making like $21,000 a year.
Okay.
And I had made that in bonus the previous year. But the quality of time with my son was invaluable. You know, again, I'll tell you, being a dad is the greatest job in the world a man could ever have. I don't care what you do. Being a parent, being a dad is the best job a man can have. You don't call in sick. You don't take vacation. I mean, it's just a wonderful job. And so this was about the same time that education was trying to get rid of the management profile and take on the leadership profile. And they was kind of transcending towards what businesses were doing. Okay. And so I came in at the right time. And because I had all this leadership experience. And so I was only in the classroom 8 years, and I became a principal, an assistant principal, a high school principal, a district coordinator for school improvement, a district coordinator for AVID, a district coordinator for college career readiness, CTE and IB programs, a regional superintendent, an executive director. But it was that skill set as a troubleshooter that allowed me to understand how to disaggregate data and how to make improvements. So that transition from the business world to the school system, even though it seemed totally disconnected, was perfectly aligned for me.
What was it about that environment that instantly caught your attention? There's the logic part of it for sure, right? And logically, it might not be a good decision because you're taking a 60% pay cut. Yes. But you're like, look, I'm a dad. I need to do this. But was there some specific incident or something that you went through as an administrator or as a teacher before you became principal? We're like, hey, look, you know what? This is my why, and I'm going to take this as far as I can, because you ultimately turned this into I would say a mission, because now you're going around to different school systems, different districts, and laying out a blueprint and saying, hey, this is what's wrong. Here's the remedy. Here's how you want to fix it. And I know this because I've been through and seen this over and over again. So you're on a I see you as being on a crusade. Would you agree? And
that's exactly
right. Some of that background.
No, I love that word, the way you put it, crusade. And the thing is, when you end up on a crusade or recognize you're on a crusade, that wasn't your intention to begin with, right? You know, you may have a goal or a mission, and then it becomes a crusade. And I think that one thing that connected it all was that need, right? That moment that I spent that whole day with those first graders and I brought no value to them, I promised myself I would never do that again. And so then I've always told, as a teacher, I would always tell my students, if I'm asking you to learn something, don't be afraid to ask me why you need to learn it. Most teachers hate that question, but I don't want to just teach you how. I want you to know why. And so that why became so important to me. And so when I think about this, and I'll share this with you, my why is to create an education system where every child will experience an education where their care, their love, their learning, and their unique talents are the focus of every teacher.
Wow.
If we could do that, we could close the achievement gap, right?
Right.
And I've written several articles on achievement gaps, and people go, oh, you're the achievement gap guy. No, I'm really not. But I do know that until we address specific concerns, we're not going to ever close the achievement gap. There's so much money to be made in having an achievement gap. I have a friend who's amazing. He's a great superintendent, and he would always say to me sometimes, Larry, the achievement gap is filled with brown skin and dark skinned children. And I said, you know, that's not a true statement. He goes, yes, it is. I'm like, no. If the achievement gap was filled with brown skin and dark skinned children, there would be no achievement gap. It would be fields. I said, unfortunately, the brown skin and dark skinned children are on the other ledge, on the far side of the achievement gap. And that's the problem. We haven't filled the achievement gap. And he was like, you know what? I'll never say that again.
Right. Now, while all this is going on, you know, you're certainly passionate, you're driven, you're doing all this work, you know, because it feeds your soul. But at the end of the day, you also have to make a business out of it. You generally have to make some income. So I want to shift gears and talk about how you were able to make your passion into something that could feed your family or be a source of income for you. Because a lot of people, I mean, like Roosterly has about 2,500 clients throughout the country. Many of them are, I would say 20% of them are probably at the very initial stages where they're either working a full-time job and their business is like their side hustle. They're not generating enough to make that switch. And a lot of them never do make that switch. And so talk to me a little bit about how you were able to do that successfully. That's my first question. The second part of that would be, how do you generate more clients? Because I would imagine that the sector in which you work with, education, the sales cycles are slow. It's probably all about networking. I'm not sure because we don't sell. I mean, my experience with the education vertical is very limited. So can you talk about those different elements one at a time?
Well, let's start with the second one. You're exactly right. It's slow. It's about networking. And it's sometimes it's a good old boy system, because what happened is a lot of former superintendents retire and they have so many friends, and that's who they call on to do the consulting, right? And that's why I tell everyone, I'm not a consultant. I'm here to give you a remedy, right? Most consultants will say the results are based on this, this, and this. I'm going to tell you, no, the results are based on everything that we implement, but it's how effective your people implement it. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to teach you it. And so that's how, you start to build that clientele. I've written several books and I speak at conferences and I'll travel. I've been in over 16, 17 different cities and states speaking, and I speak at these conferences for free, right? It's all on me, but that's my exposure, because at that conference, I don't think I have competitors, but there may be someone who says, I do exactly what he does. Well, no, you don't, right? And unless they get to see both of us side by side, they'll believe that. But once they see what I offer that they don't, that separates it. Now the tough thing is that transitioning from 80% of my income comes from where I work and 20% from my side hustle, as you call it.
Yeah.
It's called stepping out on faith, right? And I've written some books, and those books became like launching pads to doing workshops and things like that. And so that's how it started. But that's how it became a business. But it all started with just being in the school system and recognizing the needs of our children and our teachers, that it wasn't there, right?
Okay. So you found that, look, for your type of business, understanding that industry, that vertical, that marketplace, and understanding your audience, how they buy, you came to the conclusion that, look, the best way for you to grow your brand, grow your business effectively, to generate clients and longstanding relationships and customers, was to either write a book and or do speaking engagements where you don't charge, but that exposure, by showcasing your experience, by showcasing your knowledge, that would build sufficient credibility, sufficient trust, where your audience would say, look, after he's done talking, I'm going to go up to him because I think we need him. And that's what you do over and over and over again. And that's how you got the word out. Is that an accurate statement?
No, that's perfect, because, when you look at marketing, 58% of marketing and education comes from word of mouth. Okay. Yep. Right. And if you look at that, right. So if I did a national campaign on social media, excuse me, if I use the AIDA, right, model, which is awareness, interest, desire, action, right? Yeah, sales funnel. So if I do a social media launch and it hits 1 million people, and trust me, that's amazing if you hit 1 million people ever, right? Well, 1 million people are aware, but maybe only 500,000 are interested, because just because everyone's seen it doesn't mean they're interested. So when you get that, then you go 500,000 may be interested, but only only 250,000 may have a desire to actually use what you're doing, right? But based on funding, based on fiscal year, based on budgeting, whatever, a lot of things come up. Maybe only 5% will actually take action. So, when you do this on social media, that's the thing. You know you're going to spend a lot of money, but you should really only expect 5 to 7% of action on that. But when you go and talk to people face to face, and you have them in the moment, because most people come to conferences because they want change.
Sure.
So, and I will tell you, that's the biggest thing. You have people who want change, but they're not allowed to change. So those people, they have an interest, but they can't take action because they're like, you know what? I'll give you a perfect example. I'm working in a school district. They just spent lots of money on restorative practice. Restorative practice is amazing. And I don't let anyone tell you it's not. It's amazing. It's an amazing program. And it's an amazing resource. However, there are gaps within it that my platform, working with our 4D students, feel, right? So if you are my restorative practice counselor on my campus, I'm sending everybody to you. Well, that doesn't help you, and that doesn't help the process. Restorative practice only works if there's a consistent structure throughout the whole campus that student is returning to whenever they go to you. And there's an expectation. So I help fill those climate and cultural expectations that you can fill a gap with restorative practice, because they'll tell me restorative practice isn't working. I'm like, no, it is working. You're not doing the things that make it work best. And so that's why I say I'm a remedy, not a consultant.
Right. It's like going to the gym or signing up for a gym. You got to do the work.
That's right.
To make it work. Understood.
You can't do upper body and say my legs aren't getting bigger.
Yes, exactly. No, 100%. So typically, are you able to reveal sort of what are they packages? Is each proposal tailored to the school district? Are you able to give a range of sort of what your typical?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
So if I'm doing something like, I have one called Internal Leadership Learning Community, where I help, where I take leaders within the organization. And it's called collective genius conversations, right? It's how we grow from the collective genius of our own organization. That one is like 350 per administrator, right? So if you want to send 100, that's the price. If you want to send 200. The thing is, it's beneficial because now it puts you I like to put it this way. It puts you in front of the right person with the right answer at the right time. You have far too many people who find the right person with the right answer, but far too late, right? And there's always someone within an organization who has experience or knowledge working with every situation that we come across. But when you look at the traditional organizational chart, that person may be so disconnected from the person who needs the help, they never meet each other.
Sure.
So this internal leadership learning community that helps connect those things. The other one is the working with our 4D students, Defiant, Difficult, Disrespectful, and Disruptive. Sorry about the noise. I'm outside and the airplane decided to come by.
It's okay.
That one is based on the size of the district, because what I do is, if it's a district with 1,000 teachers and they bring me in, I donate 1,000 books to them.
Wow.
Because I want them to have the application in hand of how this works. And before I leave, I have every campus within a district design 4 campus-wide strategies that they can use for their children. And it's not district-wide because every campus is different. So it's specific to that campus. And they tend to like that, because you may have, I'll ask you, if you just had to think about your time in school, what student do you think was the most problematic? Was it the defiant, the difficult, the disrespectful, or the disruptive student?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the question.
During your time in school as a student, which student do you think caused the most problems in your school? Was it the defiant, difficult, disrespectful, or disruptive? Which one?
I would say the defiant or disruptive.
Right. And when you think about that, the defiant and disruptive, there's reasons for that, right?
Right.
The disrespectful student is just that student who wants to be funny or popular, right? Yeah. And that student is actually makes really good grades, but impacts everybody else making lower grades. The defiant student, if you understand why they're being defiant, why this person is being disruptive, or why this person, are doing the things they're doing, you understand the reason behind it, you can fix it. But that disrespectful student,
Yeah.
you know, that's the one that we have to be. I mean, all of it starts with genuine, authentic relationships, right? And so, you know, again, so that one is based on the sides. And so I want the teachers to have that book in their hand, because there's things in there. There's worksheets in there that said, okay, here's Larry. He's a Defiant student. Here's the things that he does. And then it's based on the strategies that's in this book, what would you apply to Larry? It gives them a hand-on roadmap to being successful with students. And it's not just a handful of strategies. It's a lot of strategies based on different students and different things that I've gone through in different districts I've spoken with.
So I know that every child is different, but when you talk about the 4 Ds, disrespectful, defiant, disruptive, the fourth one was what?
It's defiant. No, whenever someone does it, throws me. It's defiant, disrespectful, disruptive. Why not? Now you got me forgetting.
It's okay.
Difficult.
You wrote the
Difficult.
book on it, so
Difficult.
difficult. Okay.
Difficult.
Is there a common thread? Can you expand just a little bit on? Is it the home life? Is it the parenting? Is it socioeconomic status?
Wow, you know what? That is the perfect question. You ever seen that? It's a figure of an ice. It's a picture of an iceberg, and 10% above water, and 90% is below water. We don't even see it, and it's all those things you just mentioned. It could be home life. It could be low socioeconomic. It could be the fact that, you know, when I first became a principal, an assistant principal, one of the things I realized, and this is really interesting, we had a large number of students failing, but they were from one area of our demographic, right? One area of our attendance zone. And what I realized was this was one of those areas where it had a lot of the budget suites, the suburban inns, you know, where people live there, you know, they live in those hotels. Well, those students that lived there, they were about 20% of their family's household income. Or when they left school, they went home and they became the parent, or they had children themselves. So when you look at those things, giving them a traditional day, expect them to go home and do homework when they had to go to work, it didn't work for them. So I came up with a situation. I looked at the Texas TEC codes, you know, Texas education codes, and it said homework is only to be given as an extension of the day, not as new assignments, and it should, or as a project. It should not keep a student from succeeding. So we enacted that, and those students became very successful, but we also gave them start periods where they could go and do work within the school day and get it done. And that they saw us as, look, this school is helping us out. And that was very beneficial to them. So things like that, that's what I call building authentic relationships. Okay. Right. And
now, do you focus? That's a great example. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. I think that's really, really powerful. I could see that being, is that more middle school students, high school students, or where does that fit?
All students, right? Okay. You think about this. I'm going to tell you, I'm an educator, have a master's degree, but if I was to homeschool my students, I'm going to tell you my children, they would have deficits in math and science. That wasn't my strong point. Okay. Right? Sure. My son and my daughter, both are medical. One's physical therapy, one's medical research. So when you look at it's both places. So where does a student needs the most? When does a student need the most help? When they're doing the individual practice. Okay. Where is the least amount of help available? During homework time, right? Yeah. So if we could just we could build in those intervention times during the day, bring those students in 45 minutes, 30 minutes to say, hey, we're going to help you with math and science during this period. And we know who the students are. And we can alleviate some of the stress and struggles they have during that individual practice, during homework time. And we can help them understand how to do those objectives and how to master these objectives and learning skills. And I mean, think about that. How beneficial is that to our kids?
Pretty much. That was a really fast car. I wonder what that was.
That was a really fast. And you know what? I'm about a mile away from the highway. So that's
somebody's in a hurry. You know what's interesting to me is a few years ago, I had hired a number of interns. These are college students.
Yes.
Some were white, some were brown, some were black.
Sure.
and I'm going to speak with 100% candor on this subject.
Sure.
The ones that were Caucasian absolutely crushed the internship, right? They did great. The ones that were African American did not. And I was really disappointed, mostly in myself, because I wasn't sure what I was doing wrong. And they weren't just working with me, they were working with a whole team of folks. We've got 40 employees. Before I give you the answer, do you know why that might be?
Well, I was going to ask you the factors. Tell me the factors behind the intern, right? Mm-hmm. Because when you look at our data, students who graduate high school and go straight to college and never quit, the success rate is the same for African Americans, Hispanics, Caucasians, Asians. But when you add in factors like I had to drop out to get a job, I had a child or a parent died or something like that, then you start to see this discrepancy in data. So what were the factors involved in it?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can speak to the factors, but I can tell you what my conclusion was, because I feel like growing up and through college, even post-college, I would be lumped in with the folks that didn't succeed. And let me tell you why. So you've got this group of interns. The ones that were Caucasian, they came from families whose parents had corporate jobs. Their parents were decision makers in some cases. They were officers, VPs of sales, et cetera, et cetera. Their families came from good neighborhoods. Their families' dinner table conversations, how they interact, were focused on understanding how to interact and work with folks, right? They're part of multiple clubs, etc. So they already came into the role understanding how to comport themselves, how to conduct themselves, the language they use, their judgment in situations. It was amazing. And I thought to myself, gosh, if only I was this polished when I was, 20, 21, 22. Now, how I grew up, we didn't have those types of conversations. We had no clue what went on in the business world or corporate America. Our parents weren't of that ilk. And so we had to learn, I myself had to learn the hard way, which is probably why I made a lot of mistakes. I was usually intimidated, usually nervous, usually had low self-esteem, in those early days when I had a career, which I looked good on paper, right? But I didn't know necessarily how to act or what to do. And so I felt that limited me. And so I saw similar behavior in these folks, right? Some of our minority interns, because they just simply didn't have the foundation or the fundamentals that early to know what to do. Now, here in Chicago, there's a number of programs. There's actually one that I know of, not a number, but that specifically address that gap. And I'd love to hear if you think I'm full of hot air, or if you think that's legitimate, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll give you a thought, and I'll give you a short story. The thought is this. So depending on, again, background is important, right? Students come to us all the time with different learning knowledge, different learning levels, right? Mm-hmm. Different learning expectations. How was the intern program described to the different groups, right? If an intern program is just described to a group of students as you're going here to learn, they don't go into that intern expecting to be, moving forward, making changes. They're going in there with a learning mentality, and that slows them up. Now, if you have a group saying, okay, this internship is for you to apply what you've already learned, that group of people are going to be a little further ahead. So I don't know how it was explained to them coming in, but again, I know it's really important to debrief students before they do anything, intern, externs, right? But if you don't tell them that this intern is about the practical use of all the theory that we've been talking about and discussing, this is where you're going to apply it. This is where you're going to see it at work. If you don't explain it that way, they go into it just like they go into a classroom expecting to learn. And that does seem like they're further behind. Have met with a young man. His name is Zondwa Mandela. He's Nelson Mandela's grandson.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so in South Africa, African Americans, Black, well, I should say,
Sure.
South Africans that are Black have a 53% unemployment rate. So he started national call centers. He traveled around the world and he gets major companies to do their call centers out of South Africa because their native language is English.
Right.
Right. And so we were talking about this very thing. And one of the things we find out is in America, we say soft skills, but what they are, they're human skills. Right. Human skills are not taught in school anymore. And what you're talking about, the things that may take place at home, watching the news, discussing politics, those are human skills.
Yes.
Right. And sometimes, and just not all of that, but there are a lot of African American families who sit down and, you know, like with me, my son and my daughter, we talked about things at the dinner table. Right. And I actually make posts about lessons learned at the dinner table, you know. And so, but when you have a household where the mom and dad are working constantly, those moments don't take place, right? You're not discussing politics. You're learning politics from your friends. Are you, you know, one thing we don't see at all anymore. We don't see parents reading newspapers. It doesn't exist. You know, I grew up with grandparents who read the newspaper. Right. And so I learned to go, let's read the newspaper. Let's use practical experiences. Talking about, I learned about politics by parents who actually talked about what was going on in the country.
Sure.
Not just, oh, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. You know, that's what's happening now, you know. So you're right. If those things don't take place at home, that puts students behind, but it doesn't mean that student isn't able or that person isn't going to catch up and learn, right?
Right.
Because the acceleration curve for someone who has a desire is still greater than that of someone who already has the knowledge.
Yes. Brilliantly said. Absolutely brilliant. You know, I think we both know people who are smarter than us, hopefully.
Yes.
We think that way. But there's, in some cases, they don't have that drive. They don't have that desire. And that's so right. that raw talent doesn't get put to use sometimes. And I think it's just a beautiful way of the universe is that you've got to have the desire in addition to the raw, you know, the fundamental aptitude, you know, which is really, really cool. So I find what you do absolutely fascinating. I wish there was I get to live vicariously through, the folks that I get to talk to. But I'd like to shift gears and go back to the business side of what you do. How do you grow your business? Are you a one-man army? Can you only handle so many clients? And before I conclude that question, oftentimes people who do what you do, whether you describe yourself as a consultant or a remedy, you have what's called, the dilemma, what some people call it the doctor's dilemma, that you can only see so many patients as there are hours in a day. So now, do you operate like as a practice, or are you growing, and sort of what are your plans for the future?
You know, I'm going to say both, right? You're right. I mean, the reality is you can't double book a client.
Right. I
can't work with an organization in Fort Worth on October 3rd, and at the same time, October 3rd, work with a company in Sacramento, California, right? Or school district. So that's true. But that's any industry, any occupation pretty much. But the beauty is our children are eternal. They're going to always be children. And so, and I'm going to always find a way to get things done, in this day and age of you and I are meeting via technology.
Right.
If I have a client who says, Larry, I need you on this day, and I have someone that morning, I'm like, okay, let's arrange to do it this afternoon via Zoom, since I can't fly across the country in time. So technology has made things so much better for us, even though we tried to, we just pushed back. We just didn't want it to happen, face to face, the energy that face to face brings.
Yes,
right?
I can't deny it. Absolutely.
And I did a workshop in Sacramento, and I had probably about 40 people on there. And wow. I kept saying, I need your cameras on, because you're talking into the abyss if it's just a blank screen. And so, but you're right. I want to keep growing and I want to keep going. I don't want to franchise it because again, I think of all these really great brands that franchise and all of a sudden the quality wasn't there, you know? So you're right. There may be times when I can't get to someone, but I'm going to find every alternative calculation to find a way to get to them. Right. Awesome. Now I got a question for you though. It's your interview, but when you talk about, I want to go back to the interns. Did you bring those same groups of students back the next year?
I did not. It was only a one time thing. It wasn't meant to be a recurring.
So to get better data, you should have brought them back the next year and saw the learning gap difference, right? The ones who were here, see how much better the ones who were back here became better, right? That's when you get your true data. And that's the problem with, again, standardized testing, right?
Right.
Our kids don't come from standardized homes. They don't have standardized background. They don't have standardized needs. They're not standardized children. So when you take a one-time sample data size, it's not the whole story because you may have just put students in a situation they've never been in. They just read about.
Right.
You know, and I just wrote a paper about if we could expose our students to more things, not let them read about it, actually let them actually put their hands on it.
Right.
You know how much more they would learn, how much more they would gain from that knowledge, right? When you allow students to do, I remember taking students to study for the AP exam, right? And our AP exams were pretty good. We had about 180 kids pass it the year before. But this next year, I was in charge of it. So I had all those students. I had my English teachers, science teachers, math teachers. We took those students to a college campus to do the studying.
Okay.
So twice a week, we got on the bus and we went to a college campus. So that AP test became a reality because they're like, you know what? As a result of this test, this is where I'm going to be.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
We had over 300 kids pass the AP exam. We went up with a 30% increase in passing rate, a 42% increase in test taken. And guess what? Because they could see the results of their work, the fruit of their labor by being on that college campus.
It's that immersion component that's just so valuable until you show someone that horizon and they get to feel the textbooks and the tables and they see that, going on to a college campus for the first time is a big deal, right? So no, that's amazing that you get so granular at that level where you're a coach and really walking them through is a huge deal. Now, describe to me, we only have a few minutes left, so I want to sort of get into who's your ideal client?
You know what? My ideal client is students, even though that's not who hires me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Everything I do is for the student. I have a friend who's a doctor, and she said she went to hear this really great psychiatrist, world-renowned psychiatrist speak. And one of the doctors in the audience asked, why have you had so much success with adults? And her response was, I've never had any success with adults. And everybody's like, wait a minute, you're world-renowned. What are you talking about? We're here because you're supposed to be so great, so successful. And she said, I fixed the child in the adult because that's what the problem is. Wow. The child in the school is our main focus. So even though I'm working with adults, I'm saying, okay, what do you need? And is this based on the needs of children? Right. And when they answer that question, every move is critically scripted. Don't tell me you want to move teachers here and here because, this teacher's taught 9th grade so long, they deserve to teach seniors. No. I need my best teachers teaching 9th grade. Because if I can teach my 9th graders to write, I'm not worried about them passing an SAT or an ACT when they get to junior and senior year.
Sure.
If I can teach my elementary kids to read, I'm not worried about them failing a reading test in middle school.
Right.
So, our problem in education is we take our best teachers, we take our teachers who've been around the longest, and we say, okay, you deserve to teach senior this or senior that because you've been around. It's not about the adult. When I was a principal, on my door, it said this, and it wasn't the most popular statement until my assistant superintendent said, Larry, I love it. And then everybody loved it. It was the needs of adults. The needs of children far outweigh the wants of adults.
I agree.
And I gave every teacher a pad at the beginning of the year that says, This school was built to educate children, not to employ adults.
Beautifully said. I couldn't agree with you more. Wicked. Say that part again.
There's a large number of CEOs, superintendents, presidents, vice presidents who are very successful, and they have a form of autism, usually Asperger's.
Okay.
It's because they're very good at doing specific things. To run a company, you don't have to be the most social person. You just have to be the most successful person.
Got it.
Right. And when you look at, I have a nephew who's he's high autistic, right? But if you give him a video game, he won't look at the instructions and he will know how to master that game within minutes. Right. Because that's, and so when you look at that, I have really oh man, I have this superintendent. He was so amazing. I got to tell you this story. You got to hear the story. He was the first superintendent in this school district that wasn't from that school district.
Right.
Now, here I am, the first African-American assistant principal in the school district's history. So I go to the district planning committee meeting. There's about 44, 45 teachers, parents, administrators there. No one's sitting next to this new superintendent. Right. Wow. So the only seats available are right across from him or right next to him. So I sat right across from him, speak to him and sit down. And he says, he puts up there, he goes, we had 26 initiatives. That's too many initiatives. He said, here are the 12 things we did well and the 14 things we didn't do so well. Everybody got upset because he said 14 things we didn't do well. And they started complaining. So he asked his communications person to go ahead and add everything to the list that they want to add. About 30 minutes passed. Now it's about 40 things on the side that they do well, right? And you can see them patting themselves on the back. And with a straight face, because he's mildly autistic. He doesn't do all the socialization. He doesn't do all the smiling and things. He looked at everyone in the room and said, I agree with everything you put up there. But did any of those things take away from the 14 things we don't do well? Wow. The room went silent. What a powerful statement.
Right, because they have no filter.
They have no filter. But it was so, and the thing is, they couldn't get offended because he acknowledged what they said they were great at.
Right.
But he asked, did any of those things you add take away from the 14 things that we're not doing very well? Right.
Amazing. Awesome. How do people get a hold of you, and who do you want to connect with?
I want to connect with everyone because, the thing is, it's an organizational problem, right? So then that's why I do business organizations and schools, because the organizational structure is a problem, right? It's not always just, a school. And if you look at it, I don't care if you're a Fortune 500 company or a small school district, you're both organizations. Yes. And you're going to have the same problems, right? Employee retention, unsatisfied employees, whatever, the disgruntled employees, you're going to always have those things. And in education, unfortunately, people don't realize it, but we only have two clients,
right?
Parents and students. Now, someone's going to tell you, what about society? What about the community? Well, society is made up of communities, right?
Yes.
Communities are made up of families, right?
Absolutely.
And families are made up of parents and children. So when you get down to it, we have two customers, parents and students. So give me a call at my number, 817-793-7074. Listen, I will talk to everyone. I will come and speak. I just did a book study with a school district because they wanted to do a book study. And I said, let's do it. I went and took one of my books and did a book study with them. You can contact me at larry.davis@remedyteam.org.
Okay.
Go to my site and reach out to me. This has been amazing. Honestly, I feel like we probably could go for another hour because
I was literally going to say that. I was like, if we had more time, I think I could talk to you all day long. And I love whenever I get to connect with somebody who's authentic, who's sincere, and who's passionate about what they do. That literally drives me, because I think to myself, all right, this guy's out there hustling. What could I be doing to optimize our processes and grow? So again, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to chat with you guys. Larry Davis at Remedy.
Larry.Davis@remedyteam.org.
All right. Awesome. Thanks so much. All right, guys, have a great day. Check out Larry. Bye-bye.